This book is a prophecy, written more than 50 years before the fact. It accurately describes the German Democratic Republic, also known as East Germany, and so you should know this book, even if you are not German. But let's slow down. Before we delve into the story, we should learn something about the author of this book, Eugen Richter. Only this way we can understand how such a prophetic book could be written. After he had studied law in Bonn, Heidelberg and Berlin, he became a civil servant. After some problems in his job, he turned to journalism and in 1867 became a sitting member of the Reichstag of the North German Confederation. His party was the German Progress Party, a liberal party in the classical sense. In parliament, he became famous for picking apart the government's budgets and handing rhetorical beatings to the Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, who frequently called the Progress Party enemies of the Reich. One of Richter's colleagues in parliament was August Bebel, one of the founders of the German Social Democrats. He was a proponent of Marxism and wrote the book Woman Under Socialism, which reached over 50 editions. It was Woman Under Socialism that inspired Richter to write his own short book, Pictures of the Socialistic Future. Look closer and you see that Richter gave his book the subtitle based on Bebel. This is what Richter's book is all about, handing a warning to the people of his time what the ideals of the German socialists would bring. And now, into the story. The red flag of international socialism waved from the palace and from all the public buildings of Berlin. If our immortal Bebel could but have lived to see this. Richter begins his book with a description of the day when the socialists take over Germany. Obviously, he names Bebel in order to make clear whose utopia he is describing. A diary writer documents the events of the coming of socialism for us. We do not know his name, but we know that he is a bookbinder and had dedicated all he could to achieve this new birth of mankind. So did his family. There's Paula, the writer's wife. There also is their son Franz, a compositor, who soon will marry Agnes Müller, a milliner. Ernst is the middle child. He wants to enter into an apprenticeship and shows no interest in school. Our diary writer and his wife also have a daughter, Annie, who is only 4 years old. Grandfather, also unnamed, completes the household. Full of awe, the whole family watches the removal of the statues of Frederick the Great and the Humboldts, and their replacement by Marx, Lassalle and Liebknecht. But a few reactionaries are not celebrating. With the exception of England, Switzerland and America, socialism is now dominant everywhere. The former plunderers of Germany, the bourgeois class, desperately tries to flee the country. However, they have to leave all their property. The new government takes action immediately by introducing a multitude of progressive measures. The state guarantees the same rights and benefits to everyone. Taxes are not necessary anymore. Young people will be educated freely, and old people will be maintained by the state. Women are now free from the toil in the household. Their children are in education centers, state cookshops provide the meals, and there will be great central wash houses. Everyone shall have a home for free. Also, the government disbands the military and the police. They are not needed anymore in international socialism and could present the danger of a reactionary coup. Of course, the people have some duties in return. Everyone from the age to 21 to 65 who is able to work is obliged to work. The hours of work are fixed at 8 hours. Everyone has to turn in an inventory of his possessions. These are then impounded to the benefit of the community. Banknotes, securities and shares are declared void. Bullion has to be handed in. In return, everyone gets a passport with a photograph on it. This passport gets a certificate every 2 weeks. Like food ration cards, such certificates have to be spent on things like food, your living place, but also on miscellaneous things. The certificates can only be saved up to a certain limit to prevent the return of capitalists through savings. Every act of spending is registered to make planning easier. You see, the logic here is clear. The state will take care of the people. Therefore, they do not have a need for property anymore. Here, a small split in the family happens. Franz, the son, and Agnes, his bride, have saved for their wedding. Now they have lost the saving accounts. This leads to a tumult in front of the banks, but the new chancellor reacts quickly. He declares that the question of savings will be considered by the Committee of Government. He begged all true patriots and consistent socialists to confide fully in the justice and wisdom of the representatives of the people. Loud hurrahs greeted our chancellor as he withdrew. Nevertheless, worried by the protests, the government warns of a fire and the fire brigade disperses the crowd. Driven by necessity, the new government reintroduces a protection corps, 4,000 strong. The police once wore blue uniforms and helmets. This corps will wear brown shirts and a Rembrandt hat with red feathers. Therefore, they are not police. The new arrangement of the state changes the lives of everyone. The best houses in the country become childcare centers, nursing and retirement homes. The 4-year-old Annie, the youngest child of the family, is happy about going to such a new home. She expects pretty dolls and clever dogs there. Old people like grandfather receive care in refuges for people of advanced years. Grandfather is not happy about this. To the working population, the new dwellings are assigned individually through a lottery. Our writer and his wife do not have to move far. Paula wins a room in their old house, and the writer of the diary has exchanged his place for the cupboard attached to his wife's room. Most of the furniture has been confiscated, but the new room is too small for it anyways. Other couples are less lucky and get separated. Every person is assigned to a cook shop, where he or she can get meals in return for one of the food certificates at an assigned time. Having a lunch with the family is nearly impossible. All cook shops serve the same dishes regardless of size, sex or work the eater is doing. Equality. By the way, the institution, which is not the police, had to be tripled to keep control in the cook shops. In socialist Germany, everyone has to register for some work he or she wants to do. Our writer stays a bookbinder, although not a master but only a journeyman. His wife becomes an attendant in a children's facility, but not in the one where the daughter is. The job assignments deal another hit to the young couple Agnes and Franz. Franz, who made some unthoughtful remarks about losing his savings, can stay compositor, but must leave Berlin for Leipzig. In Berlin, there are not enough workplaces for his profession. There's only the state-run newspaper Vorwärts. His bride, Agnes, has to become a seamstress instead of a milliner. Luckily, the government has some motivating words. Every kind of labor which is useful to the community, Bebel always taught, must appear of equal value in the eyes of the community. Unequal pay would only bring back a capitalist class. The poor administrators are in a tough spot. For some reason people seem to prefer certain kinds of work and reject others. If everyone would get his way, there would be more hunters than hares in Berlin. On the other hand, hardly anyone registered for paving the roads or sewer cleaning. Luckily, the solution for this problem is simple. For now, criminals will do the unpopular work, and a lottery will fill the rest of the vacancies. Our writer describes why this problem will go away in the long run. Once let the spirit of socialism be fully awakened and enjoy universal sway, and you will find that the most arduous, disagreeable and dangerous labors will be the very ones which will draw the greatest numbers of volunteers. And the reason is quite obvious. These volunteers will be sustained by the lofty consciousness that the labors are for the good of the public at large, and they will no longer have the reflection that they minister to the vile lust of gain of unprincipled blunderers. The reason why our writer does not volunteer for sewer work himself is beyond me. Meanwhile, in the countryside, problems arise. The farmers object to the communalization of the farms. The farmhands suddenly overrun the cities, demanding to take part in the supposed wealth of city life. Therefore, all men of 20 years must register with the newly reinstated Ministry of War. They will form an army to bring the country boors and louts back under control. Now, everyone needs a ticket to leave his place of residence. However, this does not solve the issue. Suddenly artists start to leave the country and no one is left to produce statues of Stadthagen and Liebknecht. Artists are not a big problem, especially authors are just troublemakers who will not bend to the majority. But the really big problem is that science personnel and skilled workers are leaving for Switzerland, England and America. This leaves only one option. Socialism is founded upon the principle that it is the duty of all persons alike to labor, just as under the old regime the duty to become a soldier was a universally recognized one. So can our government similarly not permit the immigration from our shores of such persons as are of the right age to labor? Every person of working age is now strictly forbidden to emigrate. The government will do what is necessary to enforce this law. Troops occupy the harbors and borders, especially the one to Switzerland. It is announced that the standing army will be increased by many battalions of infantry and squadrons of cavalry. The frontier patrols have strict instructions to unceremoniously shoot down all fugitives. This probably is the example where Richter comes the nearest to the actually existing East Germany. The only thing he missed was the Iron Curtain, but regarding the merciless shooting of immigrants he was spot on. In the end the Chancellor gets booted. A new man takes his place. His first act is to carry his own clothes to the district shop for cleaning and repairing. Meanwhile, some questions come up regarding the relation between the sexes. A new dance etiquette is implemented through which the choice of partners alternatingly lies once with the ladies and once with the gentlemen. Still, this leaves the problem of rejections. There are already proposals and discussions which would attribute the dancing partner based on a lottery. Equality! The socialist theorists have not yet come to a conclusion what such an institution would mean for intimate relationships. Also, our diary writer experiences a notable change at the workplace. Diligence and zeal are looked upon as stupidity and perversity. Even an appeal to his co-workers' socialistic honor did not help. His colleagues insisted that it simply made no sense to slave away for 50 million people and thereby receiving only the 50 millionth part of the product for yourself. Our writer gets dissatisfied with his job. Through political connections he becomes a controller instead. But the situation does not change. Instead of exchanging government stores for certificates only, officials dispose of them as they want and exchange them to their personal benefit. Agnes, who is now a seamstress in a big establishment, tells shocking stories about the relation between the seamstresses and the managers. Since she cannot leave her job, one of the head managers subjects her to annoyances and harassments for rejecting him. The main character's thoughts are diverted by a visit by Franz, his eldest son. Soon after he leaves again, Paula confesses that he will not return to his work, but together with Agnes will try to leave Germany. He uses some gold coins Paula had hidden when the new socialist state came into power for passage money. Soon they hear about the border guard boarding a ship full of fugitives. A fight ended in a bloodshed. However, 8 days later they receive mail from England. The couple made it to an English ship and now is on its way to America. While the second socialist chancellor also gets booted over disputes about the equal access to socialist art, which no one is interested in, and non-socialist art, which everyone wants to experience, the International Socialist Brotherhood breaks apart. Germany has used all its bullion, but the socialist neighbors neither accept German money certificates nor credit, and demand payment in goods. The problem is that the other socialist countries do not need the traditionally bourgeois product from Germany, like fashion, glass and pianos. The evil capitalists in America, England and Switzerland even claim that the quality of German goods is in a steep decline. Since Germany neither pays up nor feeds its population without imports, the neighbors suggest to cede slices of its territory. The Imperial Navy is recommissioned immediately. The army, already expanded to 500,000 men due to the immigration problem, is expanded to 1 million men. In the middle of all of that comes a new election. There are lots of promises of shorter working hours and other goodies. Groups of women demand special elections for half of the representatives where only women can be elected. Additionally, they demand a right to marriage. At the same time, the Party of Freedom emerges from the shadows and gains constantly. This new party faces the problem that, although there is freedom of assembly, every location belongs to the state. There is no way to pay newspapers for election advertising, and running for said party would immediately lead to a new residence and workplace somewhere else in the country. In the end, it is to no avail. Franz has proved to be right in his forecast of the results of the election. In his last letter, he expressed his belief that, in a community in which there was no longer any personal or commercial freedom, even the freest form of government would fail to restore any political independence. The reigning Social Democrats receive a supermajority. The Party of Freedom has obtained nearly 1/3 of the total number of votes recorded throughout the whole country. And this result has been obtained in spite of all the efforts made by the government side to brand them as a party of demolition, and one that sought only to undermine the established order of society. There are riots everywhere in Germany, and even the military cannot be trusted. Therefore, the brown shirts in Berlin doubles its numbers and gets its own artillery and pioneers. It is filled with fanatical socialists. Grandfather's situation is similar. He is allowed to visit them from time to time, although he now lives in the former Bellevue castle. He claims to feel less healthy. Our writer attributes this to him having no diversion whatsoever. Ernst, who wanted to enter an apprenticeship, has to remain in school until he is 18. Then follows technical training. But no one in the school cares. Why should they? Neither can they choose their work, nor will their performance impact the benefits they receive in any way. Then a big tragedy hits. Just like Germany is devastated by revolts and external threats, the family is devastated too. Annie dies of diphtheria. The shock makes Paula ill, and she is sent to the hospital. Even the former family doctor cannot help her. He reaches the daily limit of 8 working hours with his regular work, and has already been warned against committing the crime of overproduction. Germany's deficit reaches staggering amounts. Imports are nearly impossible. Germany's productive capacity has gone to 1/3 of the value before the socialist paradise came. Goods for the daily need are hard to get, but hey, there are plenty of pianos for everyone. The quality of food in the state-run cookshops is appalling. Something has to be done. In a public session, the parliament declares new measures to fight all the economic problems caused by the opponents of the socialistic system. Meat rations go down from 150 to 50 grams, and bread rations are decreased too. Obligatory work is expanded from the age range from 21 to 65 to 14 to 75. Working hours are increased to 12. Everyone will receive exactly the same rations and the same type of clothes. This makes planning easier. To get the lack of work discipline under control, punishments ranging from removal of the bed to arrest and the lash are introduced. It follows a statement of an unnamed member of the Party of Freedom, who was voted in for the district Hagen, the district Richter came from. In endeavoring to get rid of the disadvantages of the socialistic method of manufacture, you place such restrictions on the freedom of the person and of commerce that you turn Germany into one gigantic prison. Hence I say, down with the socialistic Gaul regime, long live liberty! On the forefront of the revolution stood the laborers in the metal industry. With the new reforms they suddenly have to work 12 hours. They fought to get the full reward of the labor, but still their pockets are as empty as before. All their profits now go to the state. At the same time, Italy pressures Austria-Hungary in Istria and Tyrol. France and Russia take the opportunity to demand that Germany pays its debts. France annexed Luxembourg. The cavalry stands before Trier. Attacks on Alsace-Lorraine are incoming. In the east, the Russians march on Königsberg. 40,000 workers go on strike. The government reacts by refusing them their rations. When the workers try to storm a bread magazine, fighting with the brown shirts of Berlin breaks out. Our writer finds his way through the blooded streets of Berlin. He finds his wife, Paula, in the hospital, gone crazy out of grief over the dead daughter. Grandfather is dull and apathetic. since he had so little contact with the family. The narrator goes on to find his youngest son, Ernst, to tell him to hide. The story ends with a letter written by Ernst to his brother in America. My dear Franz, be a man and prepare yourself to bear with fortitude the sad news this letter conveys. Our dear father is no longer amongst the living. Like many other innocent victims, he has fallen a sacrifice to the great rising which has raged for the last few days in Berlin. He fell a victim to the solicitude he felt for the welfare of his family. In the hope of seeing a better future for those dear to him, he had allied himself with the socialists, but recent events had entirely cured him of his errors. With the end of the story, we should take a moment to reflect on the parallels to history and the book in general. Mind you, Richter was no author, but a politician, and this is clearly noticeable. For example, he introduces new family members in the middle of the book, and he does not even attempt to provoke emotions, aside of ridicule for Bebel's utopia. There are many other books discussing socialist system. The most prominent example probably is George Orwell's 1984. Orwell clearly was an accomplished author of novels. Richter was not. Nevertheless, Pictures of the Socialistic Future is probably the most impressive utopian novel I've ever read. Hardly anyone, not even in Germany, knows of this book. But everyone, especially every teenager leaving school, should have read this book. But why is it the most impressive of its kind? All the other authors who wrote dystopian books about socialism already had some experience with this ideology, and therefore the benefit of hindsight. But Pictures of the Socialistic Future is not hindsight, it is foresight, achieved by thinking sharply about the nature of human beings. In his predictions, Richter came the closest to the actual history with regards to the Schießbefehl, the order to fire on immigrants, although not even Richter dreamed of a wall around Germany to keep its citizens enslaved. In other aspects, like the cookshops, Richter overshot the target. In the cases of retirement homes, childcare and career choice, the socialistic state clearly aimed for what Richter predicted, but never went that far. The example of assigning apartments through a lottery never came into being in reality in the GDR. However, this could easily have been due to the general corruption in socialism. The best homes would be gained through political connections. In the end, it did not matter that Richter erred in some parts. The fact that he managed to predict the general direction of the developments of socialistic systems is an accomplishment nearly beyond belief. The more it hurts that his book was to no avail. Looking back, we know that Richter failed. His book had no recognizable effect and his political opponents won. But we should not forget that he handed us a warning, and I do not mean a warning of socialism. Today, history is warning enough. Richter's warning was much deeper and more general. People may apologize or even justify their support for a state like East Germany, claiming that they did not intend what happened there. Or they may say that East Germany was not a fitting implementation of their ideas. But Eugen Richter's book proves to us that it was possible to foresee what would happen. And the catastrophe which East Germany became is easily foreseeable, because such a development is deeply rooted in the ideas of Bebel and his ideological comrades. This is the extremely valuable result of this book. Humanity had been warned, but we did not and still do not listen. We should end with the realization our diary writer has at the end of the book. And the more I reflect, the more I feel inclined to curse myself for having, for so many years, aided in bringing about such a state of affairs as we have experienced during the last few months. My only motive was the sincere belief that socialism would cause a better order of things for future generations. I believed so then, but now I see that I did not comprehend the whole question. But how can my boys ever forgive me for having helped to bring about these events, which have deprived them of their mother and their sister, and utterly destroyed our happiness as a family? There is only one thing left to say. Thank you, Herr Richter. And now it is your turn again. There are a lot of dystopian and utopian novels out there, and many of them have components which became true. Would you like to see more videos discussing them? Tell me in the comments. Stay critical, stay curious, stay free.